is large enough to survive an attack from a thrall. For today's video, I'm going to be taking a spin on the Turbo Thrall deck. This is the Lissandra deck that pairs with Shurima, and you use the countdown and advanced mechanics to try to get those 8/8 overwhelms out very, very quickly. Now, I will say up front that when the expansion dropped, this was not one of the decks that I tried early on. I had some friends that I knew wanted to take their own crack at it, and so I just kind of focused my efforts in other areas. And so this is really kind of new territory for me. I know that this is not a new archetype by any stretch of the imagination, but this is going to be my first time taking a crack at it, and for that I'm excited. Now, I also want to throw out the caveat, which is I've been having a lot of internet issues lately. That's part of the reason that recording has been terrible, and I'm tired of seeing the reconnecting screen. So for today, we're probably going to be playing the games in normals, because on the off chance that I continue to have issues and I start dropping, I don't want to just donate free LP along the way. Not that it's a big deal, but I don't know. I'd feel more comfortable jumping into some normals and praying that I don't disconnect. So without any other delays here, casual reminder, subscribe if you're new. You can use time tags to jump straight to the games if you don't care about the deck explanation. As always, deck code will be in the video description. Link to Mobalytics will be in the video description. But this is what I settled on for my version of the list. I'm on 2 preparations, 3 Frozen Thrall. I didn't want to go heavy on prep, even though I'm normally a really big fan of this card, simply because you're likely hard mulliganing to try to find Frozen Thralls. It's really important to get these down as early as possible. Ideally, turn 1 or 2. If you have to wait till Lissandra comes down, I guess it's not the end of the world, but you want those like round 4, round 5 Thralls, and that means trying to find one of these on round 1. I'm also running a 1 of Ancient Hourglass. There are not many ways to abuse this card the way that I traditionally like, because most of the really impactful cards in this list are play effects and not summon effects. However, it's very hard for me to not run at least 1 Hourglass whenever I play Taliyah, because there is a cheeky trick that you can do where you can end up with 3 Taliyahs if you Hourglass your first one, play a second one from hand, copying the Hourglass landmark, and then they make the copies. So you end up with 3 Taliyahs. And I just really love that interaction, so I always run a 1 of whenever I'm rocking her. Curator, pretty straightforward. We're trying to abuse the advanced mechanic. Preservarium for drawing cards and helping our landmark count for Taliyah. Time in a Bottle, again, advance. Ice Shard, this is mostly just to try to keep aggro decks in check. The reality is it's a really bad matchup to begin with, and this is going to be far better against things like discard aggro or more traditional aggro. The ability for Azir Irelia to continue to keep generating tokens means Ice Shard's not nearly as impactful in that matchup. That's a deck that's what I call a backline aggro deck. If you don't deal with the actual problems, you're really just stalling. So while Ice Shard is great against something like discard because you're dealing with the actual problems, Ice Shard doesn't kill Irelia, at least by itself, doesn't kill Azir, doesn't take out Emperor's Deus, etc., etc. Those are all backline cards that they use to generate value and then throw the tokens at your face. So just a quick explanation for why Ice Shard isn't technically a tech card against that matchup. Tavern Keeper for health, Lissandra, because it's kind of the point of the deck. Not really the Watcher side, but just Thralls in general. I'm running Sand Spinner because this is still a great way to fight for the board and trade for units. It eats Azir, does a bunch of things for you. I would like to run Hunter in this particular spot, I think, as well, but the reality is that I think hitting Azir makes it slightly more palatable. Ravine, because it helps with the landmark count and it gives you a little bit of health, so I'm running that over Avalanche. Currently running a 3 of Promising Future. I think this is probably incorrect, but I really want to get the combo off for this YouTube video, so I'm going all in. Feel free to adjust this number as you see fit. Inquisitor for the fast Thralls, and then Taliyah. And then I really like Clockhand just because it's versatile, and late game, if you are in just like a heavyweight fight, maybe you're up against I don't know, Target, and they've blown up your landmarks, whatever, you do get to the point where Clockhand is enough with the instant sentries to just auto create a Thrall. So if you have a Thrall on the board that's not likely just gonna get there on its own. Clockhand is like a 4/7 that gets you an 8/8 overwhelm, and you can do other things with it. And it's one of the only units in the deck that has a summon effect. So the one of Hourglass actually does neat things with Clockhand. If we had more summon effects, I would go higher with Hourglass, and I'd probably run 3 of these. But this is probably incorrect. If I'm being honest, you probably just want to focus more on the combo. But again, I wanted to do something kind of fun and cheeky for today's video, because I miss having fun. I've been disconnecting over and over. So with that in mind, we're going to go jump into some games, take the deck for a spin, and see how it goes. Looks like right out of the gate, we're getting another interesting deck. We have Braum and Anivia. And as I was saying before, I think you just hard mulligan looking for Thralls. We don't find it, but at least we have the prep. So if we don't top deck one, it lets us dig a little bit deeper. But we did top deck one. So we have the Thrall, we have at least one Curator, and we have the Inquisitor for round 5. And we are attacking on odds, so that's worth noting. But we'll go ahead and advance this a bit.
Safeguard our homes.
And I think we're fine with this. I know it cycles for them, but it's not like if we attack, they're not just going to do the exact same thing. I think here we're going to go ahead and dig with the prep, see what we can find. Interesting choices, actually. I think we're going to go with the Lissandra since we have the Inquisitors as well. And we'll get this Curator going. So while we don't get any meaningful attack here, and we're attacking on odds, which isn't the greatest, I think personally this deck wants to attack on evens because it's not that difficult if you have an opener Frozen Thrall to be swinging on round 4. I mean, we would just need one more advance card here, but this isn't too bad for us to be piloting it in the other direction. I think we will go ahead and develop our Lissandra because it gets another Thrall going. Does mean we might have some board space issues when the Inquisitor comes, but their Braum gives them the Poro. We're gonna make that Braum nice and large. It is large enough to survive an attack from a Thrall. That is actually kind of rough.
Stand behind Braum.
Okay. I think they just don't want to risk the Braum, but in blocking like this, they are letting the Overwhelm through. So we are fine with that. That feels like a bit of a win. Again, I think they may have just been fearing that we would have another source of damage. We do not. We do not have the Ice Shard in hand, but we do, however, have an Inquisitor that I don't suspect will survive next round. I think that will likely be eaten by the Braum, but this time in a bottle actually helps us out quite a bit, because if it's not eaten here, we get to make another one. So just gonna preemptively grasp before we assign the block. I think we just take the damage here. I think this is fine. This Braum has the potential to be very troublesome, but I think we just do this to continue filling up our board a wee bit.
I dare not serve any other, my lady.
And none of those are of great help. However, I think we want the Lissandra because it'll become an entomb. We are going to level our Lissandra here. And so with a backup Inquisitor, we're just a couple of effects away from getting these rolling as well. And so here we have the Entomb. I feel like we just go ahead and send everything. And the reason for this is if they block our 8/8 with Braum like we expect, because this has Overwhelm, if we Entomb there, that actually should fully connect. And so this is going to be a great way for us to potentially threaten lethal. So if we do this, that has them going down to 2. The healing will keep them afloat. Even our Ice Shard only gets them down to 1. However, we do have the Ravine and another Ice Shard on following turns. So perhaps this will be enough. So we'll go ahead and do this. Does get this within Vile Feast range on the following round, but again, if our goal here is to try to catch this Ravine, we will just wait it out. The Ravine is better than the Shard because it triggers the following turn, which means we would get this as well. Now, Anivia here does, however, mean that we're going to be losing this when it attacks anyway. So I think here you just go for the Shard to see if they've got an answer. But with only 3 mana left, even if they do have a Vile Feast or something here, then we can drop the Ravine and get the victory. So that was pretty fun. Felt a little bit weird playing against the non-meta deck, but it's been a while since I played in normals. We didn't disconnect though, so that's a plus. And let's, I guess, go play another game. Looks like we're going to be up against Swain Plank this time around. And I think in a matchup like this, what we're most worried about is burn. And a hard mulligan for Thralls again. There we go. Thrall, Lissandra means we just need to find some Draklorns or advancements after that opener. But I think that that's what you do, unless their board dictates we do something different and we top deck something different, because our hand isn't great. I mean, it's great in regards to starting with these Thrall openers, but I guess I should say our hand isn't very reactive. Even if they played something we want to answer, our hand just doesn't really facilitate that. We could consider this on 2 instead of the Thrall, but given that we have these on 4 anyway, I think sticking with our game plan makes an awful lot of sense. And just having backup Thralls. We'll have delayed returns on the Ravine, but at least right now the Ravine is looking like a solid play. I'm still fine with playing this over the Curator at the moment, largely because they've got a couple of 1 attack power units and her toughness is relevant. And apparently it just eats a Culling Strike, so that's fine as well. Gonna be taking some damage here. Ravine will help us out though. Once we play the Ravine, I would expect them to just pass. I don't foresee them developing a ton more into a Ravine. So taking the spell mana and running makes sense for them. This would be a great time to top deck a Draklorn. But instead we get another Thrall. Now that one, that one's not likely our friend. Let's go ahead and see what the Preservarium finds us first. Curator, okay, I respect it. So let's go ahead and make this one go down, and then next round we can use this one here to make that go down as well. Swain is probably connecting this next round just because they can take the open attack. Not quite at the point where it levels him, but yeah, I still don't think we developed this one quite yet. I do like this feeling of a ticking time bomb of sorts. Board space is a bit of an issue now. I would like to have her get down at some point as well, but I think for now we want to take the healing and we want to use a curator. We want to use a curator there. So the keg allows us to actually take a pretty neat open attack that guarantees we get 8 damage. If that's what we wanted to do. But we do have this sand spinner play as well. And so I think that's what we want to do. Let's go ahead and get the sand spinner there. So if we use our ice shard now, it just essentially saves a damage on these 2 units. But I think that's fine. Like, I know this is going to do 2, and so this does 1, and so it's technically 2 anyway, but if I just wait and play this later, then this did 2 and this did 1, so it's a net of 3. And so here I'm trying to reduce the damage, but also kind of force something else out of them as well. If we can get some mana out of them, that would be great. Wow. It's a lot of damage ending up there. Does level the Swain. I can understand this. They're essentially saying if I want to take this Thrall and run it into Swain, it means that we trade. But I think that's still gonna end up being the play just because we get another one next round anyway. So I'm having a hard time seeing where the issue is. The other option is we could just heal it, but given that this is a deck that likely runs Flock and Scorched Earth and things like that, I feel like the Nexus health makes more sense. They could even have a Flock right now, which is something to consider. Want to leave this back because if they do have the Flock here like I expect, because let's be honest, they always have it, does mean that we at least potentially have a blocker back that can put some serious damage on the Swain. This one can also block it as well, but and we have the Thrall. We just want to be, I think, extra cautious. This had 2 health. We didn't want to sacrifice it into the keg creator as well. So they have the warning shot into the Riptide. That is really dangerous for us because of the stuns and the board wipe, but there's not a lot we can do about it at the moment. So we have to let it go. The good news is Lissandra's gonna level, so that will give us a potential blocker for Swain. And in this instance, they both represent 6 damage on your Nexus, but blocking Swain obviously keeps the Lissandra alive. And so that part's a bit relevant.
You cannot fight the code.
And so we'll go down to 4 because of our tough nexus. And again, I think this is fine because our nexus is tough. We might as well take advantage of it at the moment.
Feel the power of true ice. You will do as I command.
Get another shard. Interesting position to be in because they do have the 1 card. But I think we're gonna be super greedy here and slow play this with the Preservarium. And that's why. Once we land this, unless this 1 card is something that's just absolutely amazing, we should... Well, now that's interesting because this, now we know they have the flock. So this was actually, I think, even a bit more important. So they can deal with this one, not this one though. As long as our Lissandra stays alive, this actually doesn't touch our nexus. And so they also have to make... We're going to force them to use the flock here so that she potentially survives. I think this is the correct play. Because again, as long as she survives, this Leviathan will not touch our nexus, and I think that's important. And now, because we get this free ice shard and we get the other one at the start of next round, we'll be able to clear up everything but the Leviathan. We've got a blocker for the Leviathan. So this all should work out relatively fine. I guess we'll develop this as well. Holding it in your hand is like a bit of a bluff, but I think at this point our game plan is pretty straightforward. So with them only getting 1 card a turn, we would hate for it to be another Leviathan, just because that would find a flock, give them another threat. That would be incredibly dangerous for us. If the deck runs it, something like Captain Farron would be annoying as well. I think here, even though we have the shard and we could clear it up, if they're going to give us the pass, I think you just take it. They might be trying to bait us into using the shard for something, and because we're going to get the draw off the Preservarium, we get to deny another one of these. I think that it's entirely fine to do something like this and then wait and see what the response is. But we also, assuming we don't die here from whatever they draw, we have lethal between the shards and the ravine again. All right, so in this instance, we want to do these before the culling strike goes off so that our nexus still doesn't take the damage. I mean, we could have also just let it go off and this would have ran it over, but that's it. A bit weird playing against non-meta decks. It's been a while since I've jumped into normals, but I like this deck so far. Maybe when my internet is fixed, we will take a crack at this on the actual ladder, because I would like to see what it can do against maybe something like dragons. I think that Azir Aurelia probably still steamrolls this. Just a hunch. Again, I don't have a lot of experience with the list, but I don't feel like we are nearly fast enough. It was weird as it sounds. In a perfect world, if we get a turn 4 Thrall and we're attacking on evens and you get that 8/8 overwhelm, I still don't think that's enough to beat Azir Aurelia. because they're just too fast. And all of your stall tools are just not good enough. So I suspect it's really bad into that matchup. I'd like to see what it does against the other ones, though. Something like Nasus Thresh is, I don't know, probably a bit closer to 55-45. Probably Nasus Thresh favored just because that deck is so good. But I think we're a little bit better off against that. Dragons are a bit slower, and all of their landmark removal is expensive, so you're likely to get the Thralls off there. So I don't know. I'd like to see how this performs. But this is all we have for today. Really sorry I'm having internet problems. It bums me out tremendously. And hopefully they will be resolved, because I've also not been streaming because I haven't been able to. So anyway, I miss you all. Thank you. If you made it this far, I appreciate you. And until next time, may you walk on warm sands.